everyone. Harry here. I'm going to be away for the next few weeks, but trust me, you're in very good hands. I've asked a few friends to fill in, and really more than friends. They are experts in their fields with lots of important and timely information to impart your way. I hope that you enjoy them, and I'll be seeing you again on November 1st. Talk to you later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Rodgers, sitting in for Harry Littman to catch you up on some of the latest legal developments. So last week, you may have missed or you may have seen that Senator Robert Menendez had a superseding indictment issued against him and two of his four co-defendants. And it included a new charge, a FARA charge, Foreign Agents Registration Act. So I want to talk about what that charge means, what new evidence has been added, and what this might mean for the case going forward. So you may have seen a month or so ago, a little less, Robert Menendez, his wife, and three New Jersey businessmen were charged with a bribery scheme. And this was textbook bribery. This is basically payment by these three businessmen who were charged with bribery. They paid money, cash, gold bars, a Mercedes, and some things for the Menendez's house to the Menendezes in exchange for official acts by Robert Menendez, things that he did in connection with his Senate seat and his perch on the Foreign Relations Committee. So we all saw the things of value. I'm sure you all saw the pictures of the cash that they got in the search warrant execution, the gold bars and so on. The quid pro quo piece, the this for that, was pretty evident from the thousands of text messages that the authorities recovered. And then the official acts were things like intervention in criminal cases in New Jersey. Menendez tried to protect a monopoly that one of the businessmen obtained and had. And then a lot of the things that Menendez and his wife, but really Menendez, because he was the official, did were in connection with Egypt. A lot of things that Egypt wanted, folks in the military and intel part of the Egyptian government. So at the time, a lot of people were wondering why there wasn't any charge related to acting as a foreign agent, because so much of the evidence had to do with the things that he was doing for Egypt. And now we see it. So this FARA charge it's a registration and disclosure act. And it was alleged that Menendez promised to do and did a lot of things that benefited Egypt. So again, that's relevant both for the bribery case and for the separate violation. So basically what FARA says is that acting in the U.S. as an agent of a foreign principal, if you do that, you have to register with the Attorney General. Now, technically, where you register is actually with the National Security Division, which is part of the Department of Justice. But you have to register and it has to be public. The registration is public. And the people who have to register are people who are doing things like lobbying on behalf of a foreign agent, public relations, all sorts of political activities, political consulting. Basically, if you are acting on their behalf, usually for money, you're supposed to register. So why? Why do we have this statute? A couple of reasons. One is to prevent covert influence by foreign principals, right? We know that all sorts of foreign governments have people here in the US who are trying to influence our government to do things. I mean, even our allies like Egypt do that all the time. But the point is we want to know who they are so that if you're an elected official like Senator Robert Menendez, you know when someone comes to you and says, I really think you should push this bill, you know, oh, hey, this guy's being paid to tell me this by the government of Canada or whatever. So that's one big reason, is to avoid the sort of influence that we don't know is covert and is really on behalf of a foreign entity. And we just want to know who people are representing, right, when they lobby and when they try to influence our government officials. The other thing that's important to note here is that members of Congress, like Senator Robert Menendez, are not allowed to be foreign agents. They're not allowed to lobby and do all of these other things. So even though the other two defendants whose names were added to this count in the superseder, Menendez's wife, Nadine Menendez, and one of the businessmen, Wael Hana, in theory, Nadine Menendez or Wael Hana could have been a foreign agent, but of course they weren't. They didn't register in that way. And what the three of them are technically charged with is being in a conspiracy to have a public official, Robert Menendez, act as a foreign agent, right? Okay, so what is new in the new indictment? Well, I went through it so that you don't have to compare this superseding indictment to the old indictment. And, as I said, most of the detail of the allegations of what Robert Menendez did for Egypt was already there because it already was in the indictment as part of the official acts that he was doing for all of the bribe money that he was getting. So, for example, there were lots of meetings between Menendez and his wife and the other co-defendants, but also people from Egypt, actual Egyptian military officials, Egyptian intelligence officials. And he gave them information. He gave them sensitive information on U.S. embassy personnel in Egypt. He ghost wrote a letter that went from Egypt to lobby other senators who were concerned about Egyptian human rights issues and were therefore holding up Egyptian aid. He provided other non-public information about holds that had been put on military aid from the US to Egypt. He intervened in negotiations over a dam being built that Egypt was very interested in. So he did a lot of stuff for Egypt, and all of that was in the prior indictment. The only new factual thing I saw was about one meeting where Menendez had been asked to help resolve a sticking point. There was an American citizen that had been killed, and there was people in the U.S. were trying to get Egypt to pay him or his family for that. And so that had kind of held up some of the aid that Egypt wanted to get. And Menendez was brought in to try to resolve that. And there's a great quote that they got from a text message from an Egyptian official to Menendez's co-defendant, Hannah, saying that if Menendez helps resolve this issue, quote, he will sit very comfortably. And Hannah then responds by text, quote, orders, consider it done. And then Hannah forwards that to Nadine Menendez, who forwards it to Robert Menendez. So there's some really great records here that underlie all of these allegations. That was true of the original bribery indictment, and it's true of this fair account for this new piece of information that they've put in. Okay, so the question then becomes, why didn't they bring this part of the case back in September when they brought the big part of the indictment, the bribery part? And at the time, I thought, and I heard others express this thought as well, that they were just trying to keep it really clean. The bribery case, as I said, is so textbook. It's really such an obvious case of bribery. You have your things of value going to them that are so obvious. You have the official acts that are being done, as I described, and then you have the connection with all of these thousands of text messages, a real treasure trove of evidence. So maybe they just wanted to keep it clean from that. FARA cases, it's kind of espionage-ish, right? Acting on behalf of a foreign entity. There could be some sensitive information that they might have to disclose, maybe even classified information. Anytime you have that sort of thing, it kind of muddies it up and makes it more challenging to litigate. So, I thought maybe that's what they were doing. So that's at least, one reason why they did it. But, it turns out that they did bring it. And the question is, why are they bringing it now? I think there are a couple possible reasons that they're bringing this now and adding it in. One is that the guidelines range, the sentencing guidelines range, the sentence that these defendants face, especially Robert Menendez on the bribery side, are very, very high, because the guidelines range is driven by two things. It's driven by the fact that he's a public official and a high-ranking public official, and the amount of the bribes, and which is very high as well, between $500,000 and $1.5 million. So his range, Menendez's, as I've calculated it, at least kind of back of the envelope, is after trial, 151 to 188 months. After a plea, 108 to 135 months. That's a really long sentence. The others would get less after trial because they're not public officials themselves, but it's a heavy hit on the bribery side. FARA has a lower statutory maximum and a lower guidelines range. So that gives prosecutors flexibility. If Robert Menendez is willing to take a plea, if the others are willing to plead out, at least the other two who are charged with the FARA, they can kind of get them out of the case maybe in an easier way that doesn't require them to plead something where they would face such a lengthy sentence. Now, sentencing guidelines, of course, are just suggestions for the judge. The judge doesn't have to go along with them, but it's hard for someone to sign a plea agreement and agree to a guidelines range that's so high. And these aren't flexible guidelines range enhancements because he is a public official. There's nothing you can do about it. And they recovered all this money. So there's not a lot that you can do about, those numbers either. The other reason prosecutors might have done it is to give the jury choices. Prosecutors always want to be able to say, if you don't like this, you can always like that, find him guilty of this, if not that. So prosecutors like that piece of it as well. So that's basically the new case. The bribery plus FARA case should be more interesting than it was before, even to see how it all plays out. And I'll be watching, and I'm sure many of you will too. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.